Well, after the Prime Minister laid the ground for a potential delay to Article 50 leaving the European Union, what do hardline Conservative Brexiteers make of these developments? A few minutes ago, I spoke to the chair of the European Research Group, Jacob Rees Mogg, asking him whether he'll now back the Prime Minister's deal in order to save Brexit.
We won't, I wouldn't have thought, support the deal as it stands. I think the real problem is the backstop, because it doesn't have an end date. It's permanent, and it would leave us bound into EU rules in Northern Ireland, to a customs union, and to barriers between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And that doesn't work, it won't work. So as long as that is there, this deal will not get the support of the bulk of Eurosceptics.
But if there were to be moves on the backstop, you might change your position. I mean, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in the withdrawal agreement itself, as I understand it.
It has to have equal weight to the withdrawal agreement. So if it were to be an appendix, that would be satisfactory. But then the backstop is itself an appendix. So you can add to the withdrawal agreement without reopening it, it seems to me. So that would work, but it must be of equal legal standing.
Does seem to be a strange position that you, who campaigned for Brexit for so long, are now potentially voting down a deal which would take Britain out on March the 29th, whereas a lot of people, Daniel Finkelstein's making this point in the Times today, who were reluctant about Brexit, are now supporting that idea.
Well, that's because a lot of people who are reluctant about Brexit like a deal that doesn't really take us out of the European Union, because they never wanted to leave in the first place, whereas we want to leave properly. And what's quite interesting about this delay, if it were to happen, is that we would still face the same position at the end of June, unless there is a deal that can get through Parliament. But it does conceivably allow, this may be a pious hope, for the Malthouse Compromise to replace the Irish backstop, because there's now time to discuss and agree that, whereas there probably wasn't time to do that before the 29th of March.
Does that mean you're warming to the idea of a short delay?
No, it doesn't. It means that there may be a silver lining.
You wouldn't vote for a delay?
Oh, no, of course not. No, I'd be much happier to leave on the 29th of March, which is what 17.4 million people are expecting us to do. People say again and again they voted to leave, not for a deal. That's really important. And there is a disconnection between members of Parliament and the electorate, that about 500 of the 650 MPs basically are Remainers, but the country at large, for a majority, voted to leave. And that is quite troubling in terms of British political life, because the elected and the electors are not as one.
We do know there's fairly widespread fear, concern of the consequences of what some people call crashing out, of leaving without a deal on the 29th. And there's been a lot of reports suggesting there could be very dire consequences. Are you prepared to inflict that on your constituents?
Well, we've had an enormous amount of dire reports coming out, particularly of the Treasury, which will all be nonsense. Bear in mind, we were going to have a punishment budget. We were going to have unemployment rise between 500 and 800,000. None of this happened. We're at record levels of employment.
That was all hypothetical when nothing was changing. I mean, on the 29th, if we leave, things will change, won't they?
Well, it wasn't hypothetical. It was economic predictions being made by the Treasury on the basis of what they knew at the time.
Although the argument is your friend, the Governor of the Bank of England, actually took the steps which avoided that economic impact.
But before we left, he said he might have to put interest rates up and there would be a recession. But he must have known what he could do.
But he did take some action.
He took some steps, but he made forecasts beforehand as to what would happen in the knowledge of the past that he had.
To you're prepared to gamble with the livelihoods of your constituents by plunging them into a no-deal Brexit.
But what you have highlighted about the Governor of the Bank of England shows the politicisation of the information he was given, because he was ignoring the ability he had to change things. No, it's not a gamble. That what is going to happen afterwards is that we will carry on trading with the European Union, that Calais and Dover have both said they will keep the ports open. It will be under our control as to what level of tariffs we impose. Dozens of countries around the world, over 150 countries around the world, are not members of the European Union, and they trade perfectly successfully.
For example, we might impose tariffs. I mean, that seems to be the government plan, which would lead to significant increases in prices of agricultural goods, which would mean your constituents would be out of pocket.
That would be a completely stupid thing to do. I would vote against tariffs of that kind. That we should not be imposing tariffs on people and making their lives poorer. We should use this as an opportunity to cut the cost of food, clothing and footwear and improve the standard of living of the British people. That's one of the exciting opportunities of Brexit.
Time is pressing. What do you think is going to happen?
I think it is likely that there will be an extension, though I shall vote against it, and we may be having a very similar conversation in late June.
OK.
Thank you
Jacob Rees Mogg, thank you very much indeed for your time.